Almost 9 out of 10 patients will have diarrhea. Half will have nausea. 1/3 will have vomiting. 1/5 will have abdominal pain. And when you come down here to SGOT, SGPT, every 5th person will have this liver problem. So conclusion of this part of the talk is that for Priya, 18-year-old young girl, asymptomatic, CML-CP desires to go abroad in 4 years is nilotinib. Because nilotinib will produce quick and deep molecular response with very low risk of transformation to accelerated phase and blast crisis and very low risk of BCR-able KD mutation. The world now has, and we are celebrating this, the 10 years of follow-up data of ENEST-ND trial this year. And I am humbled to mention that at our center, we have now over 200 patients on nilotinib. And when I contacted Novartis, they informed me that this is one of the largest single center experience from India. And when I look back, we have got 165 of these patients at active follow-up with us. And out of remaining, majority are in DRM. ENEST-ND trial, which I am going to now put in front of you, is a phase 3, 3-arm study of nilotinib 300 mg BID, nilotinib 400 mg BID, and imatinib 400 mg OD. So that's the design of the study. Nilotinib, imatinib, 400 OD, 400 BD, 300 BD. Huge study, more than 800 patients at 217 centers, 35 countries. Now compare this with 50 mg of dasatinib, 81 cases, single center, single country. So first publication, after 1 year, 2010, New England Journal. Second year, publication, Lancet Oncology, 24 months. 5-year, publication in Leukemia, 2016. And then, last year in ASH, at Orlando, we had the 10th year celebration of ENEST-ND study. And that has appeared already in Blood. Long-term outcome of patients of CML in chronic phase receiving frontline nilotinib versus imatinib, ENEST-ND 10-year analysis. And that is what we are celebrating with this webinar today. Now let's go over this. So this is 1 year. 80% of patients with 300 mg BD have complete cytogenetic response. Now we talk about MMR, which is your B goal, major molecular response. 1 year, 55%. 2 year, 71%. By 3 year, 73%. By 4 year, 76%. By 5 year, 77%. By 10 years, this is sustained, 77 years. So, ENEST-ND 10-year data tells you that the MMR achieved by nilotinib 300 mg BD at the end of 5 years is sustained till 10 years. Now let's go to deeper molecular responses, MR4 log. 1 year, 20%, 2 year, 39%, 3 year, 50%, 4 year, 56%, 5 year, 66%. 2 out of 3 will achieve MR log 4. Let's go to the deepest response, MR 4.5. 1 year, 11%, 2 year, 25%, 3 year, 32%, 4 year, 40%, 5 year, 54%. Now let's look at the 10-year presented in ASH last year. From 54% at the end of 5 years, still moves up to almost 64% at 10 years. So even after 5 years, up to 10 years, there is an increment of another 10%. What about something that you just want? Progression to accelerated phase and blast crisis. So I'd like you to look at this 5-year data. Imatinib, 12 patients. Nilotinib 300, 2 patients. Imatinib 21 patients, nilotinib 10 patients, and p-values highly significant. So the chance of getting accelerated phase of blast crisis with nilotinib 300 is much lower than imatinib 400. And then when you move from 5 years to 10 years, only one additional patient on nilotinib, 5 additional patients on imatinib. Number of patients, denominator is same. So this tells you, as time passes, patients who are on imatinib have a higher and higher and higher risk of developing accelerated phase blast crisis, which is like a death certificate. So let's look at the deaths now, and we will look at the deaths due to CML. Imatinib 16, nilotinib 300 6. So I don't think I need to convince you anymore that imatinib is weak and has problems from all angles. We have to acknowledge, and if you saw the bottom of the slides, we have to acknowledge this man, Andrew Hawkes, who has been the principal investigator of this extensive data of 10 years of eNEST and the study that you saw. And of course, our friend Saglio, he has been in India a number of times, and we've learned a lot from his experience of this 10-year study of eNEST India. So that's publication by Saglio. And Rosti, who was here last year, and Mehon, the big man, and all others. First author being Giles, nilotinib is superior to imatinib as first-line therapy, the conclusion of eNEST and study. Our lovely journal, Lancet Hematology, last year writes the true value of second-generation TKI used as first-line therapy in CML. Number of you are worried about the cardiac and the vascular toxicity of nilotinib. So for you, this 5 years ago, article published in Journal of Clinical Oncology, tyrosine kinase inhibitor associated cardiovascular toxicity in CML. Very carefully, I am going to show you this, and I hope all of you can see this. Very busy slide, but very important slide. What it does is divides patients into 3 groups. This is by the big man. Okay, big man, big journal, 4 years ago. Low Framingham risk. Those of you who remember the cardiology, low Framingham risk, intermediate Framingham risk, and high Framingham risk. So 3 categories. And now we look at nilotinib 300 versus imatinib 400. Low Framingham risk. 3 patients nilotinib, 2 patients imatinib, statistically not significantly different. Ischemic heart disease, ischemic cerebrovascular event, peripheral arterial event. No difference whatsoever. If your patient, what was Priya? Priya was 18-year-old, free from everything, low Framingham risk. So if she wants to know whether she's going to get a heart attack, she's going to get paralyzed, she's going to get a gangrene, the answer is 0, 0, 0, 0, 2, 3. Intermediate, 2 versus 5. High, 1 versus 7. So these are the category where you will be skeptic about giving nilotinib. And we are not discussing today, but very, very skeptic of using the lowest dose of ponatinib. But these are the patients you are least worried about. And these are the patients where you will compare the pros and cons. So there was an increased risk of cardiovascular events in the nilotinib arm, but the difference was marked in the high Framingham risk. And this is very, very important when you deny the benefits of nilotinib to your young non-cardiac patients. And why does this happen? For this, you have to understand the relative activity of various BCR-ABL inhibitors against different tyrosine kinases. So you've got different tyrosine kinases, bosutinib, dasatinib, imatinib, nilotinib, and ponatinib. And the red zone is the dangerous zone. Look at ponatinib. It's red all over. So it's very broad spectrum TKI, not very specific for BCR-ABL. Now look at nilotinib. It is red somewhere, but it is green at many places, yellow and blue at certain places. And therefore, though we say nilotinib and ponatinib vascular toxicity, nilotinib vascular toxicity is not even 1/10 of ponatinib. Okay? Look at this. Very interesting data, which is often not quoted, often not talked about. This is talking about potency of a TKI and selectivity of TKI. All the side effects are related to non-selectivity. Okay? So nilotinib, look at this and compare with imatinib, dasatinib. Only nilotinib, the BCR-able selectivity and potency is more than that for PDGFR, more than that for KIT, and more than that for SRC. Dasatinib, SRC comes to the top, and that's why you got pleural effusion. And so, even imatinib BCR-able comes here. So nilotinib is most specific and potent for BCR-able, and that's what you want in chronic myeloid leukemia, and that's why your patient at the end of 3 months, when you look at the BCR-able, it becomes non-detectable. Let's have a follow-up on Priya. Remember, Priya was our patient that we're discussing. So she was put on nilotinib, 300 milligram BD. After 3 months, her BCR-able was 1.1. Your goal was less than 10. It was 1.1. After 6 months, it was 0.02. Your goal was 1%. And at 1 year, you wanted MMR. And here it is non-detectable. So it is MMR 4.5 log. So she is the best of the response. She had no adverse events whatsoever. She continued this for 2 more years. So total of about 3 years. And she went off the treatment. She continued to follow up every month for 6 months and then every 2 months for 1 year. And BCR-able remained non-detectable. Just before the lockdown occurred in Mumbai and India, she had moved to New Zealand for her luck, for her higher education, and has joined a very reputed institution. So that was my case 1. We move to case 2. My case 2 is at the other end of the age group. She is my case 2. This is a lovely couple. My case 2 is 63-year-old female. She's a retired army officer. First time she cried 2 days ago on phone, saying what is happening at the China-India border, which she had never dreamt of. Anyway, that was because she was an army officer. Seen in February 16, she used to smoke. She took alcohol quite regularly, all this. Army officer ultimately. She was diagnosed with interstitial lung disease, and not just smoke-related lung disease, immunological lung disease, and for which she was on steroid, about 5 milligram alternate day, and azathioprine also 50 milligram twice a week. And with that, her lung was reasonable. She had kidney stone, she had recurrent UTI, and she would require treatment off and on. And this February 2016, she was diagnosed to her CMLCP, and interestingly, in a very, very alert lady, the spleen already was massive. What it tells you is that the disease could be different in India when we say that the risk scores in India in 50% of patients are high. Not just late diagnosis. I cannot believe that this lady had a late diagnosis, but she had an aggressive disease. Her uterus risk score was high. In fact, there was a blast in the peripheral blood, though she did not, it did not change her diagnosis of CP from marrow. She had no hypertension, no diabetes, no ischemic heart disease, but her kidney was not so good. Her fibroscan of liver showed early fibrosis, not unexpected alcohol. So now, what is the treatment option for this, our retired army officer? So your options and options, 4 years ago we had these 3 options: imatinib, dasatinib, nilotinib. And if you look at the structure of nilotinib, it is very similar to imatinib, and dasa is very different. So patient was explained about all the options. She was told not to get worried that she will require lifelong drug. Chance of 40 to 60% that she can achieve TFR. Dasatinib was not considered because of her interstitial lung disease and underlying long-drawn smoking. She was also explained about imatinib being a poor choice for her because she is a high risk Sokal score and her kidney function is not good. Bosutinib, of course, was not available in India at that time, and also with her little fibrotic liver, even if it was available, I would not have thought about it. She was little confused, so we put her on hydroxyurea, allowed her to go back to her city and come back after some time. So she came back after 10 days with a choice of she will like to take Nalatinib. Now, why I talk about Sokal score? I'd like you to see, this is Nalatinib, this is Imatinib. If you have high Sokal score, I like you to look at this, 23% Imatinib versus 45%. Nalatinib achieving MMR 4.5. 23% double. And even if you have low Sokal score, look at this, 36%, 53%. So by and large, Nalatinib is a superior drug, and when it comes to high Sokal risk, you cannot take a chance of putting patient on Imatinib. What about kidney? She has a long-run history of kidney stone, recurrent UTI, and her creatinine is 1.7 at baseline. Now look at this published last in Annals of Hematology. Assessment of chronic renal injury in patients receiving TKI. And I want you to bring here what I've highlighted. The authors conclude that Imatinib was significantly correlated to chronic renal injury, possibly associated with glomerular and renal tubular injury compared with Nalatinib when you use them as first-line therapy. And now look back at your patients of Imatinib. How many patients got the creatinine going up? And you attributed it to their diabetes, hypertension. You forgot that this also does this. So Imatinib is not a good choice for 63-year-old lady having a high Sokal score, having creatinine of 1.7. And if you want more convincing data, this is what happened to the glomerular filtration rate, which dropped on Imatinib, and the moment drug was changed to Nalatinib, improved. Another patient, drop on Imatinib, switched over to Nalatinib, improved. So that's fortunate that if you are alert and you pick up the renal dysfunction with Imatinib, change the TKI, your kidney may reverse, improve. Now let's have a follow-up on our army lady. So after 3 months, her BCR-ABL became wow, 0.9%. After 1 year, 0.021. This was in March 2017. She did have some changes in amylase lipase. Maybe her pancreas was not so good. She used to take wine every evening. Little bit of changes in the liver enzyme, little change in her blood sugar. None of them were significant enough for me to tell her to stop Nalatinib even temporarily or decrease the dose. She was very, very alert. She would do this very frequently because they were changing. At 15 months, BCR-ABL became non-detectable. Remained so till March 2019, that's about a year ago. Then she decided to go for TFR. This was 3 years after the diagnosis, 2 years after the DMR. And that's what we found. So Nalatinib was discontinued in April last year. BCR-ABL IS by RQ-PCR was monitored every month till October and every 2 months after that till today, and it has remained undetectable. Last month, May, she got significant skeletal-muscular pain and she needed NSAIDs around the clock. We had cautioned her, and we cautioned that to all patients of TFR that they could develop this, and this could be very, very painful. The same has started reducing, but it has not totally disappeared. We did not acquire steroids. We did not have to restart Nalatinib. Patient is on no medication except for her drugs of interstitial lung disease, and of course she has given up smoking, she has given up alcohol. Side advantage of getting a disease. Let's talk about treatment-free remission after first and second generation TKI. So after Imatinib and after Nalatinib. This is a very nice article published by Cotis from MDSUC 2 years ago. So when you talk of TFR, you have to talk about this Frenchman, Franco Mahon, the father of TFR. Sitting in his clinic of CML, he was very uncomfortable that everybody is talking about giving imatinib or TKI lifelong. He had guts and his patients cooperated to stop the drug and see what happens. And this is what happened. He published almost 10 years ago, 40% of patients after stopping the drug did not relapse. So 40% of patients were in molecular remission. A biological functional cure of CML. And that figure has stood the test of time for 10 years. So today, the goal of treatment of CML is TFR. Benefits of TFR, to this August gathering, I don't have to mention. You are free from the serious long-term adverse events like pleural effusion of dasatinib, pulmonary hypertension of dasatinib, renal dysfunction of imatinib, and vascular toxicity of ponatinib, etc. Lingering mild toxicity of imatinib, fatigue, skeletal muscular pain, GI symptoms, skin changes, waterlogging, all go away. Psychological factor of you being sick, taking drugs for the whole of your life, coming to see Dr. Agarwal every 3 months. Social issue for young people. Cured CML versus somebody on drug, marriage, pregnancy, and of course the cost of therapy. There are certain requirements for stopping TKI. You cannot stop TKI in everybody. So total therapy should be minimum 3 years, and this is more for nilotinib. If you are on imatinib, it should be preferably 5 years. DMR of 2 years, and for imatinib, I would say 3 years. And then comes most important, willingness for intensive follow-up. The patient thinks that job is done is highly mistaken. It is when the country opening up and you think that the corona has disappeared, you are highly mistaken. So same thing here. You stop the TKI doesn't mean that you disappear. And you should have access to a very high quality qPCR testing. And the result must come in reasonable time, not after 1 month. And you must have an expert hematologist or medical oncologist like you to take care of your patient. So this is the green, yellow and red zone. So these areas, the lockdown does not open. So same thing, red zone. So if you have various criteria which are not fulfilled, you will not talk about TFR. So patient accelerated phase of blast. Patient has got a BCR-able transcript which is not measurable. Patient had failure of first line, which has become a relative contraindication. Less than 3 years of TKI. Patient was not achieved deep molecular response. And if the deep molecular response is for a very short period. So this is big no. Well, all these institutional criteria met with, so is not high, BCR-able transcript is typical, patient is in chronic phase, is an optimal response to the first line of therapy, and of course this is now no more valid. We don't wait for 8 years, but a deep molecular response that has lasted for 2 years. And they become candidate for TFR. So let's come to our friend nilotinib and look at the data of TFR with nilotinib. So we got 3 studies here: INEST Freedom, INEST Stop, INEST PATH. INEST Freedom is first line nilotinib for more than 2 years. So this is front line nilotinib. INEST Stop is when imatinib was the first line of treatment and then nilotinib for 2 years. And we are mainly going to concentrate on these two. So that was the design of the study, and I'm not going to take you over this design of the study. It was very simple, that the patient should have achieved deep molecular response and that should have lasted for 2 years. First publication 2017, INEST Freedom we are talking about, TFR following frontline nilotinib in CML chronic phase, INEST Freedom study. Second publication 2018. And then this data last year appeared in Journal of Clinical Oncology. So you've got 192-week data of INEST Freedom study. This is equivalent to 3.7 years. And cut the story short, TFR was achievable in 50% of patients and it was sustained. Okay. So if you stop 100 patients on nilotinib, 50% of patients relapsed, and then it was on steady. Once patient relapses, you put them on treatment immediately, the chance of they gaining deep molecular response is almost 95 to 98%. And that's what you want. So you can try TFR for patients who are on nilotinib for more than 3 years, of which 2 years are in DMR. And once you stop it, you follow them up every month for 6 months, every 2 months after that. The moment there is a loss of MMR, you put them back on nilotinib and they will achieve the deep molecular response. Stop. What was inner stop? This is second line nilotinib. Again, you got 192 weeks data, 3.7 years, published by none other Franco Mehan. Again, similar kind of data. You got around 50% long-term treatment-free survival. And again, when you put them back, if they relapse, you achieve 90%, 95% patients getting deep molecular response. So first line nilotinib, second line nilotinib, more than 3 years, 2 years of DMR, stop the treatment, follow up very carefully, very closely, every month for first 6 months, every 2 months after that. If they relapse molecularly, MMR is lost, put them back on the treatment and they will get deep molecular response. So this is Japanese study. Look at these names. Cessation of nilotinib in CML who have maintained DMR for 2 years. Multi-center phase 2 trial, stop nilotinib. They'll stop. They'll SR. Similar data. No major difference. Treatment-free remission in about 55% after first line and sustained TFR in almost 60%. What is this withdrawal syndrome? So withdrawal syndrome is when you stop TKI, you get skeletal-muscular pain. And this is common. This can happen in 10% to 30% of patients in various studies. And this can happen right up to 6 months to 1 year. This can resolve, but can take months. And interestingly, it is supposed to be a little less common with Dasatinib. I haven't used much, so I don't know what is. The mechanism is unclear. Immune workup is negative. ANA, DNA, RA, CCP, all are negative. If you had underlying rheumatism, chance of having withdrawal syndrome is higher. NSAIDs are very useful. Very rarely we have used steroids. If you de-escalate the TKI before totally stopping, it is supposed to reduce the incidence, but I have not tried this. Very rarely you have to reintroduce TKI. I haven't done this in any patient. If you want to understand everything about this entity, go to this journal 2019. Nice, beautiful review article, skeletal-muscular pain in CML after TKI cessation therapy, written by Vamsi Kogan. That was my case to teach you about treatment-free remission. We move to case 3. This is my case 3. This one, relatively young man, 36-year-old from Jodhpur, looks like a Raja, right? CML, CP, uterus low scope, no comorbidities. Straightforward, he was put on 400 mg of imatinib locally in Jodhpur. But what happened to him, for which he came for consultation, is whenever he tried to take imatinib, morning, afternoon, evening, before food, after food, with water, with whatever, he will vomit, vomit and vomit. He will have abdominal pain and he will have diarrhea. Hardly imatinib will remain in his body. Treatment was interrupted, restarted, etc. Even the dose was tried to be reduced. Problem kept happening. A stage came when he refused. When he saw us, we had absolutely no hesitation. As such, we don't like to give imatinib to a 36-year-old man who is free from all comorbidities. So he would have been our case for nilotinib anyway. But now, there's no question of torturing him with imatinib. He was put on nilotinib 300 mg BD. He tolerated it extremely well. So this case will discuss imatinib intolerance. Side effects of imatinib, the so-called very benign drug. So gastroenterology, there is a problem. And look back at your patients. How many patients you were not very comfortable with GI toxicity? Skin toxicity. which can be very mild to you, and you may tell patient that it's all right, take some Alagraf, take some Avil, take some drug, etc. But patient considers this as a chronic niggling nuisance in his life. So skin pigmentation, depigmentation, sometimes rashes, sometimes pruritus. And look at this one. It's not just erythematous, it is raised. It's maculopapular. And look at this one. This is a diffuse erythema. Look at this one. This was very, very annoying. This kind of, he was a dark person, but look at what happened to his skin. This patchy depigmentation. Horrible. He just didn't like it, the family just didn't like it. Waterlogging. This man said, hell with CML, take care of my eyes. And he needed 40 to 80 milligram of Lasix if I wanted him to look back what he was, which of course I could not give. So I had to ask him to learn to live with this or come out of imatinib therapy, change over to nilotinib. Look at this chronic edema of feet. And what happened to the skin when you have chronic stretching of the skin? This was scleromuscular toxicity. The man almost got frozen shoulder. So, talking about imatinib adverse events, hematological toxicity grade 3, 4, 33%, 16%, 6%. Non-hematological toxicity we just saw. Waterlogging, muscle cramp, GI symptom, skin rash, arthralgia. 22%, 12%, 9%, 4%. And now I want you to look at nilotinib versus imatinib from Enos-Handy study. So what imatinib does is talk over here. Nausea, muscle spasm, diarrhea, vomiting, edema. This is imatinib. And with nilotinib, all this is rare. What happens is, yes, rash, headache, pruritus, alopecia, fatigue, myalgia. But these were all grade 2. Grade 3, 4, of course, were uncommon. Now this is comparing imatinib with nilotinib. All this, face edema, peripheral edema, lid edema, fatigue, depression, nausea, muscle pain and muscle cramps, various colors to various things. Highest score is more of these. So imatinib gets a higher score, nilotinib gets very low score. So this is comparison of all these annoying symptoms of long-term imatinib therapy. This leads to compliance. In a drug like TKI, what is important? The drug doesn't fail if patient is compliant. And the patient is compliant if he does not have adverse effects. So if you are puffed up every morning, you try to compromise on the drug dose or taking the drug altogether, because after that, your face becomes good, or your skin becomes good, or your pain disappears, or your GI symptom disappears. Compliance, huge problem. So don't neglect this niggling toxicity of imatinib. Article is interesting. There is minimal cross intolerance between nilotinib versus imatinib. So if you get some problem with imatinib, chance of that person getting same problem with nilotinib is minimal. The word is minimal, coming from Cantargian. So summary of this part of my talk is, the results confirm that there is minimal cross intolerance with nilotinib in patients who got imatinib intolerance. This resulted in more patients achieving the planned nilotinib dose, translating into significant clinical response. The results corroborate that nilotinib is an effective, well-tolerated therapeutic option for patients of CML-CP who were imatinib intolerant. And to remind you, MDACC, Cantargian, he has published this. This is sustained molecular response with nilotinib in imatinib intolerant CML. So that was my case 3, to teach you what are the niggling toxicities of imatinib. We move to case 4. Case 4 is also a reasonably handsome man. He is also 32, self-employed, SOS in 2017, CML, CP, uterus low score, comorbidity. So fantastic case. He was on imatinib 400 mg. But what happened to him was a disaster. His BCR-ABL1 IS was 83% at diagnosis, and at 3 months, the first disaster, it was 52.6%. Very compliant patient. No side effect of imatinib, but efficacy, disaster. Somebody made the imatinib dose 600 mg, and then made 800 mg, And I don't know, in this country, this is very common. Look back at your colleagues and friends. When imatinib 400 mg does not produce the result, they think this is the best way to go. This is not the best way to go. If imatinib 400 fails, the chance of that person getting TFR is almost negligible. And the moment you keep increasing the dose of imatinib like this, you are inviting trouble with toxicities. And look at this gentleman, after 6 months, 31%. Utter failure, and you lost 3 months. And you gave him a dose which produced side effects. So what is the next step? You have to move on. Obviously, imatinib is out for you. Now, which one should you give him? So when you have got a resistance to imatinib, and this is called primary resistance, before switching to a particular TKI, you must do KD mutation. So BCR-ABL KD mutation was done, and the most popular amongst is around is Sangus. So Sangus was done, and then it was done by NGS. And I'll come back to you for one, because nothing was detected by Sangus and nothing was detected by NGS. I will come to this, but I must tell you that Sanger being negative is not enough. So if you pick up something on Sanger, it's okay. Don't pick up something on Sangus, do NGS. It is cheaper, more expensive, widely available, less widely available. So when no mutation was detected, we had the option. We could give him what we want. Nilotinib, dasatinib, bosutinib. Remember, ponatinib is not approved for even this setting. You have to have a particular mutation. We'll come to that. So this patient was started on our friend nilotinib, 400 milligram BID, second line, so 400. Excellent response, DMR achieved in 18 months. And patient now desires to undergo TMR. This case, I am going to discuss resistance to TKI with you. So when you start a TKI, you may succeed, you may fail. That means your patient may succeed or patient may fail. So imatinib resistance has emerged as a significant challenge in achieving optimal outcomes. There are two types of resistance, primary resistance, secondary resistance. Primary resistance is what our patient had. This is defined as failure to achieve a landmark response. Or secondary resistance is when you achieve that landmark response and then lose that response. And that's why lifelong monitoring on a TKI is required. If he's on a particular drug, he may lose the response any time after 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. I agree that as the time passes, the chance of secondary resistance becomes less and less. Coming back to imatinib resistance, given the frequency of it, patients should be very regularly monitored. This is in order to identify suboptimal response and treatment failure at its earliest. This is very important that you pick this up at the molecular level at the earliest and not at hematological failure, not when the WBC goes to 12,000, 14,000. Resistance is predictive of treatment failure. Now, 8-year IRIS data has been published. What it shows? Imatinib failure in a whooping 45% of cases. So when, I'm quite amazed by it, but even in the meetings when the hematologist, oncologists all say, imatinib is good enough, they forget this, they don't look at this. 8 years, 45% of the patients were not on imatinib. The reasons for these were adverse events, but some. Most were treatment failure due to resistance, primary or secondary. And out of that, the commonest cause was KD domain mutation. So this brings the discussion on how do you assess the response to a TKI. Clinically, spleen goes away. Hematological, species normalization. Cytogenetics, PH chromosome goes away. And then what is most important, what you must do is molecule. And how do you do the molecule? The way Timothy Hughes from Australia, Brisbane taught us. He has taught this to the whole world. Follow that. And what he tells us, there's only one way. BCR-ABL by RQ-PCR and then international standardized. Not qualitative RT-PCR, not FISH. And you don't need mutation study to know the response. So the one in the red is the way. Quantitative BCR-ABL 1 and then IS, international standardized. And what you are wanting is a deep molecular response. Look at pink here. Deep molecular response is MR4. So you want that kind of response because that is minimum required for 2 years to enter TFR. And what are the goals? At 3 months, BCR-ABL less than 10%. At 6 months, BCR-ABL less than 1%. At 12 months, MMR less than 0.1%. These are your goals, what is called optimal response. And when you got suboptimal response, you are in the yellow zone. And when you have failed, you are in the red zone. And it's your duty to pick up failure of patients' TKI responses, primary or secondary, at the earliest at the molecular level. And why should you do that? Because when the BCR-ABL at 3 months is not less than 10%, the long-term outcome is half of the patients will go into trouble. While if you achieve BCR-ABL less than 10% at 3 months, then most of the patients will have no trouble. This is survival cause. So you're losing life. So you consider red, yellow and green zone and then you take actions. Action is switch to the second line TKI. Option nilotinib, dasatinib, bosutinib and ponatinib if you've got 315 mutation. So how do you select a second generation or third generation TKI for patient who's got suboptimal response or failure? So you do KD mutation study. This is a must. And surprising number of consultants, junior or senior, change the drug from imatinib to something without doing KD mutation studies. This is unethical because you may be giving wrong treatment, allowing accelerated phase blast crisis, that means death certificate. So this is unethical not to do KD mutation. And number of pharma company industry is giving you this free of cost. So there is no reason why you should not do this. So what are you looking? You're looking at these KD mutations, P loop, A loop, and others. What you have in red over here is the most frequent mutations. These mutations account for almost 70% of your patients. And these are the tall bars which are more common. And look at this 315. 20%, 25% of patients. This is the one where you will require ponatinib straight away. Now, what is the advantage of doing all these mutation study? You keep this chart below the glass of your table. And when the patient comes with a report, he is in the green zone, you got nilotinib, dasatinib, anyone, your choice. When he is in the yellow zone, you look carefully what is the mutation and then use whatever he is sensitive to, because this is a dangerous zone. And this is big no-no. So if you've got these mutations, you cannot use these drugs. This is a very simplified form. The list is quite enlarged. So this gives you whether the dasatinib will be effective or nilotinib will be effective. So this is a summary of this talk. To increase the dose of imatinib when the 400 has failed is not the best solution. It's a bad solution. This is commonly done in India. However, it increases adverse events and very little benefits in long term and almost no TFR. You must check BCR-ABL KD mutation. This is also done very sparingly. This is surprising that though Sanger sequencing is widely available at a reasonable rate, you don't do it. Support also is available, so you can do this test without cost. Choosing a wrong 2G TKI will jeopardize the life and lead to progression of disease to PPC is the last thing you do. So finding the right BCR-ABL tyrosine kinase inhibitor gives you success. Like in this patient who had 299 V299L mutation. So look at this, 299 mutation detected. Treatment was switched from dasatinib to nilotinib and the patient responds. The BCR-ABL levels come down. And this is another headache. No mutation detected in 45% of patients who failed the first line of TKI. What do you do there now? If you have done it by Senger's, you go to NGS, like we did for our patient. So remember this, just don't say that there is no mutation, I can do what I want, I can use whichever TKI I want. This is the patient where you didn't pick up, go to NGS. Next generation sequencing. Next generation sequencing provides a more accurate picture of BCR-ABL mutation in patients who failed TKI. If the TKI is not changed or appropriately chosen, as per NGS, you will miss a lot of resistant low-level mutation, and they will selectively expand and kill your patient. When you have both the options, suppose there is no mutation by even NGS, and you got both the option, then you look at this comparative data of nilotinib from dasatinib as second line of therapy published over here. This is nilotinib, this is dasatinib, this is patients without progression. Nilotinib and age over dasatinib. This is patients alive without progression, nilotinib has an age over dasatinib. This is patients alive, nilotinib over dasatinib. So nilotinib in imatinib resistant or intolerant patient with CML chronic phase, a 48 months follow-up was published in Leukemia 7 years ago. So this is something you and me learned as a student. I'm not going to spend time on this. So first line failure, nilotinib is a standard answer after doing your KD mutation studies. We come to our last case. This is rarest of the rare, the pediatric CML. So pediatric CML is a rare disease, and that's our patient. Young girl, she's 14-year-old girl from Bangalore, CML CP, moderate spleen, BCR-ABL IS was 93, she was so-called intermediate risk. There was some past history of TB treated, there was one episode of jaundice, fully recovered. We put her on nilotinib as preference. A young girl going to go to college wanted to get rid of the treatment at the earliest. When you have that need, the guidelines tell you that a more potent drug is the best way to go. Pediatric CML accounts for less than 5% of leukemias and less than 1% of all the cancers under the age of 20 years. Traditionally, it is said, I'm not sure, I'm not saying this, but the literature says, this is not my experience, that pediatric CML is a more aggressive disease. They come with higher WBC count, they come with larger spleen, they come with more blast cells, they come with lower hemoglobin. Okay, so if it is, then you also need to be more aggressive. That means there is a ready-made case for second generation TKI. So this is our phase 2 nilotinib study in pediatric patients. Nilotinib demonstrated efficacy and manageable safety profile in pediatric patient, newly diagnosed and pre-treated. So both the patient, first line, second line, nilotinib. And this is cumulative MMR data over about more than 3 years. So newly diagnosed is the red, second line is the down one. Results after about 3 years, almost 50 to 65% getting MMR. This is newly diagnosed nilotinib at the end of 3 years. Fantastic. Event-free survival almost all. And this is imatinib resistant, indolent 3 years, nilotinib, almost 90% patients event-free survival. The dose of nilotinib for pediatrics is 230 milligram per meter square given twice daily. Ceiling is 300 milligram. If you want to read about pediatric CML, which I do not have more time to discuss with you, he is the man. Nobuka Hisiya. Articles after articles, review after reviews. This is one of them published, Clinical Finding Management, Unanswered Questions about Pediatric CML. Last couple of minutes before I take up your questions relate to certain miscellaneous aspects. So we have nilotinib in accelerated phase. 2 years data published long back. We have nilotinib in patients with blast crisis. Data published long back. And I'm going to close with ELN 2020 recommendations for treating CML. The great man, Hawkes, is the first of them. And then you have all our friends. Bakarani is here, Apalle is here, Curtis is here, Denninger is here, Hughes is here, Kantarjan is there, Kim, Meon, name and they're all there. Redich, Richter, Rosti, Saglio, all have come to India as our guest speaker. Okay. So what does ELN 2020 say? TFR is the goal, irrespective of the age. My military lady, 63-year-old, when I said, you can continue to take, she said, for how long? I said, till you are there. She said, my parents lived for 95 years. Am I going to take this drug for 37 years? So a 63-year-old lady says, 37 years, I don't want to take it. And she went for TFR. So irrespective of the age, TFR is the goal. Of course, younger the patient, stronger the region. Risk status must be assessed by using UTOS survival score. UTOS actually has the same 4 entities like your previous scores, but the weightage given to each point is different. So SOCR and UTOS both have same 4 criteria which you look at, but weightage given to each of the 4 is different, and this is what is now internationally practiced. You must move to 2G TKI as and when there is intolerance, which could not be ameliorated or a milestone was not reached. BCR-ABL at 3 months of more than 10% indicates treatment failure if it is reconfirmed twice. Avoid the term CMR, complete molecular response, substitute it with molecularly undetectable leukemia, and specify the number of control gene transcripts. So the lab giving you the report, look at this part. Once MMR is achieved, you can consider reduction in TKI doses. If there is no BCR-ABL KD mutation, the selection of second line TKI should be done on host profile. First line 2G TKI, that means nilotinib upfront, can be considered for younger patients, for patients in whom TFR is the top priority, and to me, it is a top priority for all, and in women who want to become pregnant. So, 20, 30, 40-year-old young man, my 63-year-old military woman, young lady, a woman in 20s who wants to get married or wants to become pregnant, and anybody who thinks TFR is his top priority, first line 2G TKI. Future. I'm not going to take you too much time. I'm just going to tell you what you should read. Students, March this year, Jaguar, again he was with us, Kantarjan, his boss. Jaguar has done a lot of work on CML. Chronic myeloid leukemia 2020 update, published in American Journal of Hematology. Jaguar, chronic myeloid leukemia, first line drug of choice. So you want to read all the debate, imatinib versus nilotinib versus dasatinib, 40th anniversary issue, American Journal of Hematology. And this is nilotinib in the treatment of CML. It reviews everything about nilotinib by Selvi. So, what I saw today, you must ask yourself, what did you see today in last 70 minutes? You heard a lot of good news, and you got a lot of important messages, and you understood what is best 2G TKI. And you know now who is the boss. This is the boss, nilotinib, and that's imatinib and dasatinib. So this is a new dawn in front of you. We discussed about nilotinib as first line therapy, ENEST ND trial, 10th celebration year, 10th anniversary of this trial. So you got everything available to you. Pluses, minuses. There were very few minuses. Imatinib as a second line therapy, which you have practiced, but the rational therapy by doing KD mutation study, by looking at KD mutation study, by NGS if Sangas did not pick up, by picking up this drug based on the host profile if the mutation is absent. etc., etc. Discontinuation study, which is the standard of the day, TFR, we looked at in a freedom trial for first line nilotinib, in a stop trial for second line nilotinib. And we looked at nilotinib in the pediatric subjects. So what we did today is over here. Nilotinib for CML and TFR studies following nilotinib. Nilotinib first line in a STEMD, nilotinib second line, and nilotinib pediatric study. And we looked at TFR, ENS freedom, in a stop, and in a SPATH. We didn't go into the details, but we looked at this at great length. We looked at this at great length, and we looked at the pediatric data. The lesson you must have learned today is, be the PM. Learn how to hit hard. Hit hard, but also hit early. In cancer, there is no second day. When a patient relapses, the zeal is gone. The relatives and the families and the friends disappear. The pockets are empty. The patient disappears. And when he disappears, he dies. Your first chance is the best chance. All oncologists know this. But apply this to CML, chronic phase. Your first chance is the best chance. Get rid of the drug therapy in 3 years by using nilotinib upfront, achieving DMR, go on for 2 years, and then have an access to best quality BCR-ABL and patient compliance. So, drug is a game changer. Nilotinib is a game changer. Lot of myths about nilotinib, cardiac toxicity, vascular toxicity have been removed from your mind. You have to believe whatever you heard because it was solidly backed by evidence-based data. Be very comfortable even if you had a CML, and you can make your spouse very comfortable, because that spouse without disease in 3 years. That's all I have for you folks. Thank you very much for sparing your 1 hour 15 minutes, and we will now go to the question and answer session. So we got 14 questions which we will discuss now. What did I do? Okay, here we are. So Bolam Rajesh, how to decide between nilotinib versus dasatinib in a young patient upfront? So upfront you don't do KD mutation studies. So you look at the patient's host profile. If there are clear-cut contraindication for a drug, your job is very easy. Like if I have that military lady who is smoker who got interstitial lung disease, I cannot think of dasatinib. Or if I have a patient who is 75-year-old with 2 myocardial infarctions, has undergone angioplasty, CABG, had a stroke, and suppose, let us say, he also had a fingertip gangrene. I cannot think of nilotinib. But if you have a young person free from morbidities, there is no lung disease, there is no risk of any complication, then my best bet is nilotinib, for a simple reason that I discussed with you at length about dasatinib toxicity. Pleural effusion, nil by nilotinib. Pulmonary hypertension, nil by nilotinib. GI hemorrhage, nil by nilotinib. Severe myelotoxicity, much less by nilotinib, and so on. You'll be surprised, but when we were a part of Decision trial, where my wife was the principal investigator, and those patients we are still with for almost about 10-15 years, we were author of the first publication of Decision in blood. We saw, and I've been quoting this left and right, unusual infections in patients of dasatinib. Repeated hospitalization for searching the etiology of those infections. So all this you have to keep in mind. Tell you frankly, my Decision trial first paper was rejected by a very prestigious journal because of pulmonary hypertension. They said pulmonary hypertension on a TKI is not acceptable. So do not talk about dasatinib upfront. Column, Rajesh again. Nilotinib versus dasatinib 50 mg dose. My friend, I don't know whether you logged in late. I am critic of dasatinib 50 mg. Single center study. Phase 2, single arm study. Small size, 81 evaluable patient. Significant dropout because of toxicity. Significant incidence of pleural effusion, one case of interstitial lung disease, and so on. And very short follow-up, median of 24 months. So when your goal is TFR, this kind of negative points puts you off. Next question again from Rajesh. Why 300 mg BD nilotinib has better responses than 400? There is some dose-related toxicity of all TKI. Remember, I don't know whether you were in hematology when dasatinib dose was 140 mg. We had a disaster, and the dose came to 100 mg. Remember when ponatinib was 45 mg? People died of myocardial infarction, and the dose came to 30 and 15 mg. Remember Australian imatinib trial? 600 to 800 mg, and the dose came to 400 mg and 300 mg. Same thing here. This was a trial to see whether 400 mg of nilotinib BD is superior to 300 mg, but because of toxicity, it wasn't. Next question. What about dasatinib in impaired renal function? I will be always careful about giving TKI to patients who have got compromised kidney function. I will ask them to do creatinine every month, but I will probably not use imatinib at all. I have seen maximum incidence of normal GFR, normal creatinine going up with imatinib in second, third, fourth, fifth year. But I will be very comfortable using non-imatinib in a person who has got a creatinine problem. Loperamide prophylaxis, can it be used along with bosutinib? It has to be used. In fact, whenever I was used bosutinib, I have began with very low doses of bosutinib, cautioning the person to keep antidiarrheal agent, Lomotil, Imodium, something at home. Take it the moment you start getting loose motion regularly. Because what was the prevalence of diarrhea? 75 to 80%. So yes, you are right. Dr. Pushpanjali, which second generation TKI is useful for patient having inflammatory bowel disease? So I would say bosutinib is out. Roshni Pandey, how to choose a dose of 300 mg versus 400 mg BD? No 400 mg BD for first line. Nilotinib first line is only 300 mg BD. 400 mg is not approved, not to be used. 400 mg BD is for second line. Shyam Agarwal, Bhopal. Good evening. A young CML CP patient develops BCR-ABL KD mutation 315 on imatinib post 1 year. Do we have ponatinib available in India? If yes, what's the dose? Yes, ponatinib is not officially marketed in India, but a couple of sources are there. There are about 5 to 6 agencies who get you drugs by importing them patient to patient. Sometimes they have the stock, and they can give you the drug over the counter. Otherwise, they can provide you drug in 15 days. It's imported on the name of the patient. Patient has to make advance payment. It's all in white, check payment. They are given bills, etc. So we have used a lot of ponatinib when pushed against the wall. The dose is 15 mg, 15, not to use higher than that. Fahim Zaved, what is historical control? So statistically, phase 3 trials are trials where there are multiple arms, 2 arms or more. Like when we talked about ENEST ND trial, nilotinib 300 versus nilotinib 400 versus imatinib 400. So that is really controlled arm, multi-arm phase 3 trial. Historical control is that I do 1 arm trial like dasatinib 50 mg has been published. So I do the trial with 50 mg and then I take up literature and say what happened with 100 mg and compare that. So that is historical control. Abhishek Ranjan, sir, please tell me follow-up of CML patient in government setup where there is minimum support for mutational analysis. Mutational analysis is available to you free of cost by the industry, irrespective of whether you are prescribing a drug which is manufactured by that particular company. For example, Novartis. Novartis has got imatinib and nilotinib. If your patient is on dasatinib, you can approach nilotinib and they will support mutational analysis from core lab free of charge for you. Pankaj has asked, 74-year-old family doctor diagnosed with CML-CP, started on imatinib, severe skin reaction and eosinophilia after 2 weeks. Imatinib omitted. Started nilotinib, developed jaundice, considered as hepatitis, resolved by stopping. Rechallenged after 3 months, again developed jaundice. After 10 days, Tasigna continued. Further line of action. So yes, if the skin reaction was severe as you have mentioned, if the jaundice was significant as you have mentioned, I will move on. And the next choice will be between dasatinib and bosutinib, depending upon the patient profile. So you choose a drug when it is due to intolerance based on host profile. So like someone asked me, inflammatory bowel disease, I will not use bosutinib. If your other friend has got ILD, I will not use dasatinib. Gopila, why can't we do KD mutation frontline and decide TKI accordingly? Very nice question. So people have done that and they found that this was a futile exercise. Upfront, the KD mutation of significance interfering with your treatment, making your results compromised, is so rare and so little that this is a futile exercise. And last thing you want to do in medicine is something out of curiosity. So they did it for research. They published that research, multiple centers, and I've told you that this is not required. Suthaktira Kanan, be happy. I'm going to answer your question. So your email was very nice to read, and I will take special care. So Sunanthira Kanan is asking, is nilotinib proven to be safe in pregnancy, even in first trimester? No, sir. No TKI to be used. Should I just say, except folic acid and low dose aspirin, nothing to be used in first trimester. I don't give iron also in first trimester, unless I feel that not giving iron, the woman may die or may end up with blood transfusion. First trimester to me is antiemetics, folic acid and low dose aspirin. Second and third trimester, by and large, I will not give TKI. I got my friend PEG interferon to manage the pregnancy. If the patient listens to me, I tell them 3 years you give me, I'll make you free from TKI and then you can have 10 babies. But if somebody is 35-year-old, then she will not listen to me because she may not have 3 years. So it's recommended that all 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, give them the most potent TKI. Go into the TFR and then let them have pregnancy. But a woman comes with pregnancy or wants to become pregnant, don't use TKI during pregnancy. And those who want to use it, explain them the various kind of teratogenicities. Lot of normal babies have been formed on have been delivered on TKI. They can take their chance. I will not take that chance. So in general, no TKI during pregnancy. Nijamuddin, CML patient, 42-year-old, having imatinib 400 mg since last 9 years. Very well tolerated. BCR-ABL 1 IS is 0% in December last year. He was advised to stop imatinib. So far, he is continuing the drug. So he is not interested in TFR. What if he stops the drug? Is there any chance of recurrence of the disease? Of course. With imatinib, on an average, 60% of patients will relapse. Molecularly within 6 months, some in 1 year. Some maybe even after that. But Majority will relapse in first 6 months to 1 year. Having said that, the longer you have taken the drug, the deeper is the response, less is the chance of you relapsing. So if somebody has taken drug for 9 years and most of it is deep molecular response, then I will not tell this patient that your chance is 60%. At the same time, I will not tell this patient that, okay, stop the drug, lock yourself because this is lockdown, don't come to me. I will tell him to wait when the lockdown is over, when he can easily travel and come to me every month. He can afford the test, he can have an access to a top quality lab and a top quality hematologist. Otherwise, keep taking it. So there are a lot of ifs and buts. 9 years and 000 is not enough for me to tell him that 100% guarantee. Not possible. Question from Madhusudan Gangvir. Good evening, respected mentor sir. Thank you. If patient has side effects with nilotinib, then how to go further? Should wait and restart another drug? Should wait or start another drug? So it depends. So we talk about grade 1, 2 versus grade 3, 4, 5. So what is the kind of toxicity? What is the nature of toxicity? What is the grade of toxicity? If you have chosen nilotinib, you must have used all your brain knowledge and intelligence and then selected nilotinib. Don't give it up for minor things. So I had patient, nausea, skin rash, some niggling pain here and there, etc., etc. So you can probably continue, give antidotes. You may probably decrease the dose, give antidotes. You may probably stop it temporarily, come back, start with a small dose and go to the full dose. Or if you have had a problem of something which is a disaster, so let's take the extreme. A 28-year-old man on nilotinib gets myocardial infarction. Let's take that. There is no question of thinking about nilotinib again, isn't it? A 20-year-old person on dasatinib gets pulmonary hypertension. There is no chance. First of all, monitor by echo all patients of dasatinib. Otherwise, you will say nobody gets pulmonary hypertension. Echo, and you will get pulmonary hypertension. Mohyuddin Khan, BCR-ABL negative, but clinical as well as CBC and AMP. Bone marrow examination seems like CML. Please comment, Dr. Khan from Dhaka. So, Dr. Khan, today by definition, a typical CML is BCR-ABL positive. Sometimes the PCR can be negative, then go for FISH. FISH should be positive. So, if the patient looks like CML, CP to me, and if my PH chromosome is negative on karyotyping, if my PCR is negative on BCR-ABL, the transcript could be different. So I do a FISH. If FISH is negative, then this patient is not a classical CML. Then this patient will be treated like atypical CML. Tiganta Thakuria. Great presentation as usual, sir. Compliments to me. Thank you so much. You made my day. Can you spare half a minute to address cost concern in a public hospital in India? Very good question. Not only in a public hospital in India, all over India. I mean, you and me are all poor with compared to those few Ambanis that we have. So we have to think of the cost of the therapy. This was my great concern when I used to say that TKI is for lifelong. Remember, TFR is only 10 years story. And in the first half of that, it was not in the clinic. And many of my friends still don't practice TFR. Many of my patients still reject TFR. So for them, it is lifelong. But in last couple of years, TFR has come. It has stood the test of time. We are recommending it to everybody. And depending upon how you counsel it, patients are taking it. So now you are considering, first of all, cost of 3, 4, 5 years and not lifelong cost. So first of all, that is a big asset. Second, your patient assistant programs. With that, almost all types of TKIs are available to you. For example, I was discussing with Novartis before giving this talk. I was ready for this question. So Novartis tells me that there are 10,000 patients on nilotinib under patient assistance program. And this program is giving them drug at the cost of 7,500 rupees per month to 90% of them. And there are 10% of them not falling in the slab. And because they are only 10%, they are considering of expanding this patient assistance program to all the 100%. That means the financial status criteria will also go away. So for the drug like nilotinib, 7,500 rupees per month for a period of about 3 to 5 years with minimal life-threatening toxicity and chance of getting TFR 50%, 60%, you calculate whether you can manage it. Of course, I understand that you got other drugs sometimes available at throwaway price or free of the cost also. So you have to go patient to patient. So I am in Dadar in Mumbai. If you are Mumbaikar or if you know the geography of Mumbai, 10 kilometers away is Malabar Hill and 5 kilometers away is Dharavi. And I have to treat both to the best what their pocket permits or what their sponsor permits. Mohyuddin Khan, when we consider transplant in the era of TKI, again question is from Dr. Khan from Dhaka. So transplants have not disappeared. Transplants are there. But if you look at the registry, international registry, European registry, Indian registry, in 1980s and 90s and even 2000, CML was the commonest indication for transplant. These are young people, fit people, have a donor, have the money, have the center, go for transplant. Because otherwise the life was very short. Interferon came the first hit, TKI came the next big hit. So today a classical case of CML chronic phase, they will be very difficult to justify an allo transplant with its 10-20% mortality, 10-20% graft versus host disease, 10-20% disease coming back. That means failure rate of 50%. TKI, by and large, you don't die. Allo transplant, you can die. In pediatric CML, I didn't have time to discuss, this is a discussion. That if the patient cannot go into TFR, a child of 10 year or 5 year will take TKI for 90 years versus a transplant. So there's a discussion. But the transplant in a child, what are the long-term morbidities and mortalities, including damage to the endocrine organs, increasing the effect of the growth, including second malignancy. So transplants for classical CML chronic phase, unless you have failed 1, 2, 3 lines of TKI. After failure of TKI, 2 lines, transplant is a big discussion because ponatinib is not the solution for everybody. So after failure of 1 line and second line, transplant comes up in a very big way. And transplant fit person, donor available, whatever type, funds available, access to good center, transplant is a big discussion. Accelerated phase blast crisis, transplant is the treatment. Next question, Satyaranjan Das, my friend. Thank you so much. I'm honored by your question. If a patient, whether on first line or second line TKI, progresses to blast phase, is there any role of doing KD mutation? Depends. So if you've got a blast phase and your patient cannot go for transplant, then I would probably still choose a TKI. There is data on each TKI in the blast phase. It's not zero. So it's not the best option. TKI is not the best option for blast phase. It's a transplant. But then you and me know that not everybody is undergoing transplant. So then you're going to use a TKI, then you may as well do KD mutation. Say 315. And you were trying anything non-ponatinib. It's a waste. So non-transplant, do KD mutation. Shivam, is there another side of the coin or is imatinib completely out? No TKI can be completely out. No TKI is completely out. Imatinib, bosutinib, this is a fantastic era that we have got. It's like a cricket team which can have only 11 and like an Indian cricket team that has got 22 waiting on the fence. So why should we write off imatinib or dasatinib or bosutinib? I will like to have the 6th one, 5th one, 7th one, 8th one. Because there is a place for every drug. But what is to be done is to use it intelligently. Somebody asked, poorest the poor patient. Say, I got a patient from Bharat who sold his house because of this lockdown, whose children are starving. And if somebody is giving me imatinib free, why not imatinib? He has to survive first of the CML, then to bother about whether he's getting the best TKI. Gohokar, again my friend, thank you so much from Nagpur. Should we not test every case for BCR-ABL KD at diagnosis? I just answered that. Okay, you should not, because it gives you no advantage. The mutations of significance are very rare at baseline, at diagnosis. Vibhor Sharma. Sir, how common is moderate to massive pleural effusion on imatinib? It has happened, but it is to be counted as anecdotal case reports. So it's not like dasatinib. Madhusudan Ganvir. So nilotinib can use after ponatinib failure? Well, that will be a retrospective step. It is like you have used nilotinib upfront, something has happened and you have to change, and instead of going to dasatinib or ponatinib, you go to imatinib. So that will be a retrospective step. If you are compelled to do that, you will do it, otherwise not. Hamza Dalal. Precaution to be advised while prescribing nilotinib with respect to administration of tablet. So nilotinib, if taken after food, the blood levels go very high. And if the blood levels go high, you are using 400 milligram of nilotinib BD. And we just discussed that 400 milligram of nilotinib BD has some more toxicity. So to give nilotinib after food is inviting trouble. So this is given empty stomach. Vibhor Sharma. A patient aged 60 years old, no comorbidities, CML CP, on imatinib 400 OD, responding well, develops unilateral massive pleural effusion. It's an exudate. All common causes ruled out, including tuberculosis, autoimmune. Responded to the ICD drainage, steroids, diuretics. Would you change to second line or re-challenge with imatinib? So you have guidelines for dasatinib, and if you use the same yardstick for your patient, then your patient does not qualify to re-challenge with imatinib. A massive pleural effusion. You could not just wait and watch or stop the drug. You needed ICD drainage, you needed corticosteroids, you needed diuretics. It's not the best case to continue or re-challenge with imatinib. Ajay Bapna, my friend, thank you so much, from Jaipur. Is it necessary to do RQ-PCR at the time of diagnosis and do qualitative PCR to know transcripts only? So this will be a debatable question. So you should know the transcript. So you have answered that already. I like to know the quantitative RQ-PCR for a simple reason that the Australian, our friend, has shown that the slope with which the BCR-ABL drops is of prognostic value. So if I have not done quantitative, and after 3 months it is 9%. And if I have done quantitative, and my baseline was 90% and dropped to 9, or it was 10% and dropped to 9, is of prognostic significance. So I do it for everyone. Any role of qualitative PCR in deciding TFR? Big no. Big no. Fish and qualitative PCR. Big no. Don't practice TFR unless you can do qualitative. Unless you can do quantitative. Sorry. Beg your pardon. Lalit Prashant Meena. Can we use hydroxyurea as a palliative treatment? Hydroxyurea is contraindicated in pregnancy. Hydroxyurea in a female should be stopped 6 months before the pregnancy is planned, because suddenly woman may be pregnant. It is teratogenic in the first few weeks of pregnancy. If your patient is on hydroxyurea, becomes pregnant, stop it on telephone. And if she asks you whether terminate or terminate, There are some patients of non-CML MPN where you are forced to use hydroxyurea in third trimester. I take written consent that patient wants to take it, desires to take it because to alleviate the symptoms. In a CML, I will not use hydroxyurea. When a woman wants to become pregnant or has become pregnant in the first trimester, I will not use it in second and third trimester and so on. Gopila, what is your take on using interferon plus TKI? So, very good question. So, each drug has a failure, TKIs have failure. People wanted to improve the responses. Number of drugs have been added to TKI. If you go to, I don't think I touched this today, but I touched this in the webinar which I did 1 month ago. How to improve TFR. In that context, I discussed this. TFR of 40, 50, 60% is not acceptable. We want TFR of 100%. So how to do that? One of the methods is to use something with TKI. One of them is interferon. But unfortunately, nothing great has happened. So by adding interferon to TKI, nothing great has happened. So it's not recommended combination. In an odd case, you can try. But nothing great has happened. So it's not a guideline. It's not recommendation. Venetoclax with TKI is the hottest thing at MD Anderson. And let us wait for the results because they feel it hits the stem cell. So the target is the stem cell. Let's see what happens. So I am informed by Kalpesh from Mice Ideas that there are 360 odd people who are logged in. Thank you so much. 360 logged in. Next question is again Ajay Bapna. In resource limited countries, patient who are being put on imatinib, how frequently should you do RQ-PCR? So I tell them to do it in the beginning at 3-monthly interval, and then once they are absolutely out of the wood, 6-monthly, and those patients who don't want to go to TFR and are now in the 10th year of their, I do it once in a year also. Or manage with just looking at complete hematological remission, as these patients will never opt for TK, second generation TK. Ajay, never say that your patient will never accept something. I have had patient who says that I will not go for allotransplant in AML. And I handled them in that fashion and then came back to me with a lawyer that this patient has relapsed, you didn't give him transplant. So be very careful. Your decision on day one is different. Your decision when things come in front of you becomes different. So never consider that your patient is not for second generation TKI. Today, I just told you Novartis is ready to give you patient assistance program irrespective of your financial condition. Dasatinib, which was yesterday not generic, has become generic today. Bosutinib has become generic today. So to say that second generation TKI, no, on financial, who knows? He may have a godfather coming and helping him. He may get an Ambani Adani who gives him money. Next question is Mafruha Akhtar. How long a person should hold TKI if planned for pregnancy in a patient who is on DMR? So I advise that let DMR go on for 2 years and then take the drug off and go for pregnancy. That's the ideal. I also advise them that when you go off the drug, wait for a year. So that if relapses are going to happen, let them happen. But what you teach does not happen in practice. If you are planning pregnancy and you want to be off the drug, then you should be prepared to take some alternative if the disease is relapsing. So you are in DMR, you can go off TKI. After 3 months, you can go for pregnancy. Throughout the pregnancy, keep monitoring the BCR-ABL. If it relapses, you can either go through the pregnancy without doing anything or use peg interferon. So 3 months before the planning of pregnancy. Roshini Pandey, that's the second last question. Should we do bone marrow cytogenetics for all CML CP at diagnosis? My answer is yes. My answer is yes. Not only that, even when something is unusual usually happening to the patient? Do the bone marrows. When you do bone marrow cytogenetics, you pick up something more than PH chromosome. And some of them are of prognostic value. Some of them are of judgment that what kind of treatment you want to offer. There are even odd cases published where baseline cytogenetic abnormality told you that this patient should go for transplant. He will not do good with TKIs. So I would say yes. The answer to this is yes. Or is it okay to do only for AP and BC at the cost saving measure? So very often you diagnose AP and BC by doing bone marrow, and once you have done that, then probably cytogenetics is not of much value because you have decided that the patient will go for bone marrow transplant.